Welcome back to this, the third segment of Conversations with Archbishop Kurtz for the month of February. We're really happy that you're with us, and I'm especially happy because we have a special guest today, Father Ed Gorman. Father Ed is a Dominican priest. Father Ed, thank you so much for being present.
Absolutely, Archbishop.
Yeah, and let me tell people a little bit about you. Many people know of the wonderful history of the Dominicans, and here from the very foundations of the Archdiocese and the Diocese of Bardstown. Of course, we have great affection for Archbishop Kelly, who last December we just celebrated his second anniversary of his passing away. But we have great affection and gratitude for the Dominicans. Father Ed, people don't know this, you came not only to be the pastor of St. Louis Bertrand, but also the prior.
Yes,
and so thanks for wearing two hats at the same time. We appreciate that. You're a priest now 20 plus years.
Yes.
And today we're going to talk about at least the Sacrament of Reconciliation, and if time allows, a little bit about, as Lent gets, we're getting ready for Lent next month, March 5th is Ash Wednesday. Maybe we'll talk a little bit, if we have time, about the laws of fasting. Sacrament of Reconciliation. Pope Francis has put it back on the map. I mean, I read recently he said, it's not to be a torture chamber, nor is it to be a dry cleaning service. It's meant to change our lives. Tell us a little bit about the great gift of Sacrament of Reconciliation, or when I was growing up, it was going to confession.
Going to confession,
yeah.
Down at St. Louis Bertrand, we welcome everyone down for confession. It's open every day for confession, Monday through Saturday, and it's a great time of peace. And
so, what time of day? In other words, I know you have a noon mass. Do you have? Or?
We have a noon mass, and confession starts at 11, and we go from 11 to right before the noon mass.
Oh, do you? Okay.
So they keep us busy.
Wow.
It's a wonderful time, and we see all different types of people coming, returning to God, returning to the church, and trying to be at peace with God and their neighbor and one another and their family. So last March, I went during Lent, and they had a penance service, and we were to line up, and that line stretched the whole length of the church. Now, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this is going to be quite a wait. But there were so many priests hearing confession that it was actually very peaceful to be able to prepare and make your examination of conscience. So I highly recommend it. That time to prepare and examination of conscience is very important. And unfortunately, they do have to wait because there's usually 2 or 3, sometimes 4 of us hearing, and the line moves along. But we have to take care of each individual.
There were not just little kids, there were young people who obviously had just not too long before made their first reconciliation. They were there. There were parents coming with their little kids. I mean, it was just a very beautiful and very family-oriented, people of all ages. So
all walks of life also.
Yeah. Well, that's a great gift you give us. A lot of people say, well, gee, there are so many barriers, so many things that keep me from the Sacrament of Reconciliation. How would you respond? What are some of the barriers?
Many barriers, unfortunately. One of the big ones is pride. People don't want to kneel down and say that I am a sinner. I am a sinner, and ask for forgiveness. The other one is people think what I've done is too great. I have too great a sin.
How can God forgive me?
How can God ever forgive me?
Yeah, to give up on mercy of God.
But a lot of times we talk with people with apathy. They just say it's not that big a deal. And to encourage them in the mercy and the love of Christ and the hope in the future is one of the greatest parts of the Sacrament of Confession, that God is always there and always there to help us with the graces.
Pope Francis, with his apostolic exhortation, not just a few months ago, Evangelii Gaudium, the joy of the gospel, he talks precisely about the core of the message being the mercy of God in Jesus.
Absolutely.
And that's really what you're offering, isn't it?
It's I often think of Prodigal Son. That's what Jesus talking about the prodigal son. He comes home and says, I'm sorry to his dad.
Yeah.
The parable, I'm sorry, Dad. And what does the dad do? He throws a party.
Yeah.
He throws a party for his son, and I think that is one of the greatest teachings. God welcomes us home, no matter what we've done, and forgives us.
Wow.
He says, My son was lost and he's come back. He was dead, he's alive, and we have to celebrate. And that's people walk in and walk out of the confessional changed.
Wow. Father Ron Knott, who writes for the Record, he had one on, I think, God the Father's front porch, and it was the Prodigal Son. It was the father waiting for the son to come onto the horizon, and as soon as he came, he ran out to meet him. So really, in some ways, you are enacting that parable. In some ways, it's standing very humbly in the place of Christ in welcoming back people who need conversion. And I'm one that's benefited, so I can't imagine that others would not. That would be a wonderful thing. You know, I remember hearing that the people, if you wanted to judge how good a character people have, looking at their capacity to say, I'm sorry, and to say, I forgive you. And it sounds like both of those are part of the very essence of the Sacrament of Reconciliation, the Sacrament of Penance. It's us saying, I'm sorry, and God saying, I forgive you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's not a torture chamber.
No, it never.
But it's not a dry cleaning service. It's not the kind of thing that we're not supposed to change. That's the other part, isn't it? That God calls us to be the best we can be. So he wants us to become fully who he's created us to be. It's not change like we have to stop being ourselves. It's discover our real self, huh?
Who God calls us to be.
Yeah.
That challenges us to do our best. And we all fall, all of us.
Yeah.
And to come back, to ask forgiveness and stand back up like the Stations of the Cross.
Yeah, that's great.
Well,
every priest within our archdiocese is involved in the ministry of reconciliation. And I know I praised all of you, the Dominican fathers, but there are many, many priests throughout who do that. So thank you for that. I want to ask you one other thing, since we are going to be close at the end of this month to beginning the season of Lent. A lot of people don't understand about fasting. When the laws of fasting were revised so that except during Lent, that idea of not having meat on Friday what became an optional thing. People thought, well, maybe fasting's optional, and yet Jesus called each of us to fast. Tell us a little bit about that gift of fasting that we need in our lives.
Yeah, I always think about fasting and abstinence. Nobody likes to fast.
No.
Nobody likes to. Nobody likes to abstain. But it is a great gift, a great blessing from God to be able to say no to ourselves and yes to God. It sharpens our senses.
Yeah.
Focuses on God, on our neighbor, rather than ourselves.
Hey, sharpens our senses. That's very good.
Sharpens our senses of smell. You know, we can smell the wonderful food, and yet we can say, I don't need that.
Wow.
I get to concentrate on God, or it's to see the food. It is a blessing. It's part of our tradition, and if we're able to do it, and we get the grace to do it, it helps us in the long run.
You know, this is really good. I hope our listeners will have the benefit just calmly and reflectively now to prepare for Lent. Yes. You've talked to us a little bit about the Sacrament of Reconciliation, about confession, and now a little bit about, hey, let's be open to the possibilities for fasting in our own lives to become the best that God wants us to be, obviously. Father Ed, thank you. The time goes by so quickly, but we're really very grateful for the ministry that you and all the Dominican fathers give. We appreciate your being with us at this time.
Thank you very much, Archbishop.
And I want to thank those of you in the viewing audience for being present for this February edition of Conversations. We come now to the end of another month's edition, but we'll be back with you again in March. If you have questions or comments that will help us, please send them our way, and know of our blessings for you during this month of February, again as we prepare for the holy season of Lent. May God bless you.